That was lovely. Thank you. That was, as I understand it, in honor of the first Sunday of the Advent. So I will light the first candle. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Church of Los Alamos and our worship service for Sunday, November 27th, 2022. My name is Felicia Orth. I'm a worship associate for the congregation. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people and gather together in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Our minister, the Reverend John Cullinan, is out this week. Our guest speaker this morning is April Brown. We'll be speaking about the Archaeological Conservancy, a national organization headquartered in Albuquerque, New Mexico. April is the Conservancy's new Southwestern Regional Director, and many of you will recognize her as part of our family. Her honors research focused on documenting rock art sites in the Jemez Mountains, using drones and spatial analysis tools. Welcome, April. Welcome, all of you, to our worship, and thank you for joining us. Okay. Chalice lighting. Actually, the chalice lighting comes from Harrisonburg, Virginia. The prayer comes from Libby Stoddard. Light the chalice. To face the world's darkness, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's terrors, a chalice of courage. To face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. May its glow fill our spirits, our hearts, and our lives. If you would join me, please, in singing the first hymn, Stand As You Are Able. 'Tis a gift to be simple. Please remain standing for our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. Thank you. Please be seated. The candles lit this week include candles in honor of all who cooked and served and displayed hospitality over the Thanksgiving weekend, and for all those striving to be their best selves. We have other joys and concerns written on our hearts. Please join in just a moment of reflection. prayer comes from Libby Stoddard. We have come into this room of hope where our hearts and minds are open to the future. We have come into this room of justice where we set aside our fear to name every oppression. We have come into this room of love where we know that no lives are insignificant. We have come into this room of song where we unite our voices in the somber and beautiful melodies of life. I'm going to stay at the podium rather than come down, so you can remain seated. I see a young person there. How many of you believe that the Thanksgiving holiday was proclaimed a holiday based on the story about the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag sharing a meal in 1621? I would say that's the most popular of the understanding, the common understanding that that's what it's based on. What if I were to tell you, though, that the federal holiday didn't begin anywhere near 1621, which is when that event occurred, was a harvest celebration. 90 indigenous people and some number of colonists, the Pilgrims, who are sometimes referred to as settlers, did share in a harvest celebration in 1621. But it didn't be Thanksgiving as a holiday, though. It wasn't proclaimed until 1862, and then again in 1863 by Abraham Lincoln. That's 240 some years later. And like with so many of Abraham Lincoln's writings, it sounds like a prayer. His proclamations always read like prayers to me, informed a lot by his study of the Bible. And the proclamation of the federal holiday was actually meant to boost the spirits of Americans when the tide was finally turning during the Civil War, and to remind folks in the North and in the South that we were still one nation, and to again, it was a morale boosting matter, a way of saying we're one nation, and the South has been tearing at that notion for a couple of years, but that is how we got this federal holiday 240 years after the harvest celebration. And of course, in those 240 years, it had become clear that the colonists were moving westward. There really wasn't that harvest celebration, 1621, had been eclipsed, if you will, by the Western movement and the the displacement of indigenous populations. So again, that myth is not the basis for our federal holiday, although the notion of togetherness and coming together to have a country based on more noble values rather than enslavement of the African Americans is the basis for the holiday. If you want to read a little more on that topic, let me commend you to a newsletter. Effectively, I know that Kathy enjoys it as I do, by an historian who writes in a very accessible way, Heather Cox Richardson. I hadn't understood a lot of what was happening with that federal proclamation myself before I went to it. Let's move then to the anthem, the Mendelssohn.
Hello, everyone. My name is April Brown, and I'm the new Southwest Regional Southwest Regional Director for the Archaeological Conservancy. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that acquires and preserves archaeological sites across the nation. And in this video here, you're seeing a site in the Cerritos area called San Marcos Pueblo, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a little while. And since our beginning in 1980, we have saved over 600 archaeological sites on a national scale. Our main office is located in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we have regional offices in Maryland, Mississippi, Nevada, and Wisconsin. And while the term archaeology normally conjures images like this, which you might recognize from Chaco Canyon, our sites look more like this. We practice, and this is another site that has a Chacoan outlier in there. So it's a big mound full of archaeology. And we practice what is called preservation archaeology. The majority of our sites remain buried to protect all of the cultural resources in situ. And our president, Mark Michael, once said to me that we have an artifact collection that rivals the Smithsonian, but it's just all buried in the ground. Even when we do allow research on our properties, we have guidelines they have to follow as far as backfilling, curation of the artifacts, even if that means burying them back in the ground. And we also reseed natural grasses and allow regrowth of natural vegetation on the sites. And additionally, when we put up our boundary fences, we also make sure that they're wildlife fences so that the wildlife can safely pass through our properties. And our preserves include everything from early man and Paleo-Indian sites like the Galt site seen here in Texas. And there's artifacts here dating back about 15,000 years of human history, to colonial village sites and forts like this one. This is Arbeckles Fort in West Virginia, and that span across 5 regions of the U.S. And so our regional offices are responsible for identifying and acquiring new sites, maintenance such as backfilling, mowing, and fencing, assigning site stewards to check on our sites on a regular basis and make sure everything looks okay, and supervising research. Each region has different cultural resources that span the breadth of human history. And I'll share just a few examples with you right now. So in the East, we have a variety of sites that include Native American village sites, quarries, like this one. This is a soapstone quarry in Pennsylvania, and rock art. We also have a few early industrial sites. This is Big Pond Furnace in Pennsylvania. And we have a number of colonial era sites like this one. This is an aerial view of Arbeckles Fort in West Virginia. And it looks like a big open grassy field, but beneath there is the remains of a fort that was built by Captain Matthew Arbuckle in 1774 in response to increasing Indian raids for the Indians that were displaced in the area. The fort was occupied by Captain Arbuckle's militia company through the fall of 1774, when they left to guide Colonel Andrew Lewis to Point Pleasant as part of a campaign during Dunmore's War. The fort was occupied again during the Revolutionary War in 1776 as a stronghold against Native American and British attacks. By this time, the Native Americans had sided with the British to try to get the colonists out of there. And research shows that they endured 2 such heavy attacks, as evidenced by the lead musket balls found at the site, as well as French gun flints. And excavations in the early 2000s by Stephen and Kim McBride also unearthed some pretty interesting artifacts. This is a Liberty seal that would have been used to impress in hot wax to seal a letter. And they also found an X amulet seen here. It was found in a blacksmithing area, and researchers believe this is evidence that an African-American blacksmith worked at this fort. And the Conservancy acquired this site in 2020, actually. It's one of our newer ones, with the help of crowd-funded and member donations. And this is in the southeast. The southeast contains a variety of sites. This is an archaic burial site. There are a lot of prehistoric burials in water here, and this is in Florida. Native American mound sites like this one at Troyville, and Native American heritage sites like this one at Prospect Hill in Mississippi. And Prospect Hill is a 5,000-acre plantation that was purchased by Captain Isaac Ross in 1808. And this is a LiDAR image of the site taken during recent surveys there. And so Isaac used slave labor to farm the cotton on this plantation, but he would later become part of a movement to free them. Ross co-founded the Mississippi chapter of the American Colonization Society, which was a society that was they were trying to free enslaved people and send them to a colony in Liberia in Africa that they had purchased. And upon his death in 1836, Ross left instructions in his will to free the enslaved at his property with the conditions that they moved to this new colony. But his heirs contested the will for many years in court, until the Mississippi Supreme Court upheld the decision in 1845. 3 years later, Ross's final wishes were fulfilled. The plantation was sold, and the proceeds were used to help these people get to the new colony. And I'll add in there that he also made a provision that no families were to be separated during these migrations. And the Conservancy acquired the preserve in 2011, and there is ongoing research still happening there to learn more about the lives of the enslaved on this property. Now I'm going to get to my region, and I'm going to take you to the Southwest. And as you all know, there's no shortage of amazing archaeological sites in the Southwest of the U.S. And the Conservancy has preserved 185 such sites in the Southwest region alone. And as I said earlier, many of our sites don't look that exciting at first glance. This empty field is a site in the middle of a Bernalillo subdivision called River's Edge. We saved 3 lots from development here that all have important cultural resources inside of them. And this lot you're looking at here is one of the largest, and it contains a deeply buried basket maker village site that dates to about 750 to 900 AD. And you can see all the houses just all around this area. And here's an example of what a pit house looks like. And this site contained a series of these structures just dotted all over the landscape. Undoubtedly, there's houses on top of probably some of this site in that area. But basket maker sites are very difficult to identify because they're so deeply buried, there's no surface artifacts. So people aren't necessarily alerted that there's something there when they start to build on them, unless they're digging very deep to find them. And on another parcel in River's Edge, we have a early Spanish contact site, a piece of one, that is believed to be one of the campsites from Coronado's 1540 expedition into New Mexico. They found pieces of chainmail and crossbow arrows and the such, and there's a portion of another Pueblo site there too. So you can see, preserving these sites are so important for future research. There's just so much more to learn. All right, we're going to take you to San Marcos, Pueblo. This is one of my favorites. It's located in the Galisteo Basin area near Cerrillos Hills. And if you look closely here, this is an aerial view. All of the room blocks, you can kind of see little bumps and mounds in there. Those are room blocks. But in the far area edge of this photo near the mountains is a mission complex. That big empty field had a big mission and a convento in it. And I'm going to show you a map of that area. And here's a map of the Pueblo as it's been excavated so far. And you can notice the mission complex up here in the northwest area here. That big open field is where all of that remains buried. And San Marcos is known for turquoise trading. They're best known for their part in the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. And here I'll show you, here's an outline of what the mission and the convento looks like. And here's what the church entrance looked like during excavations in, I think, the late 90s, I'm pretty sure. This is where they're digging out the outline of the church. And here's a baptismal font that was found in the ground at the convento. And all of this has all been backfilled and reburied, so none of this is on the surface anymore. So as I said, that church was burned down and the priest was hung during the 1680 Pueblo Revolt. So the church was basically destroyed. And this happened across all the Pueblos, as you know, during the revolts. And the revolt drove the Spanish out for 12 years from New Mexico. On this site, even though it has been looted and excavated, there's still a lot of well-preserved artifacts and resources in the ground. And you can see, here's a midden site. The middens and the surface artifacts include things like pottery sherds and ground stone and turquoise. Here's a piece of turquoise that we found laying in one of the middens, and the anthills are full of turquoise there. A piece of ground stone here, it's like a mano that was used to grind corn or some kind of plants. And there's also visible architecture at the site. This is the remains of an adobe wall that's exposed in one of the arroyos there on the south end of the site. And this site remains an important part of local Pueblo heritage. The Pueblos in the area have access to do ceremonies on this site. So we do work with the Native American communities at a lot of our sites. And an example of that is the next site I'm going to talk about, Mesa Prieta petroglyphs. And there we have a deal where the Pueblo children once a year come for a summer program where they learn to document the petroglyphs and learn about them and learn about the different archaeology in the area. So it's really nice that we get to work with the Pueblo communities and help them stay connected to these sites. All right, well, I'm going to take you to Mesa Prieta. This is the Wells Petroglyph Preserve. You guys probably know them better as the Mesa Prieta petroglyphs near Velarde, just north of here. This site was donated to us by a Catherine Wells, who has been protecting this portion of the mesa for decades. And I say this portion because the entire mesa is just covered with petroglyphs like these. And the Mesa Prieta Petroglyph Project has spent many years documenting the petroglyphs, not just on our preserve, but across the entire mesa. And I think they've logged something like 60,000 petroglyphs at this point. And there's still more to be documented. Mesa Prieta is a prime example of why the Conservancy's work is so important to cultural preservation. And we're currently in negotiations to purchase 2 more parcels on this mesa that were slated to be residential lots. And we're actively in negotiations now, but it shows that if there was any development, they would definitely damage the petroglyphs here. And this is one of Catherine's favorite rocks. This is called Key Rock. It's way up on the hill. And if you could see really well, there's even petroglyphs on the boulder behind it. It's a really, really, really neat petroglyph panel. And recently, we learned that 5,000 more acres are for sale on Mesa Prieta. And this is actually from a brochure from a local realtor. And at first, I thought they were trying to sell these off as residential lots on top, but it turns out they're selling just the petroglyph rocks on the edge of the mesa. So you can see the red there marked off. That's all just the rocks on the edge of the mesa. And here is the front of the brochure. They're selling 5,000 acres for $5 million. These are not developable lots at all. They can't be built on. There's really no access or any kind of, there's real limited utilities up there anyway. But you can just see just how, how at risk these petroglyphs are always. And here are some of the glyphs that are on that part of the parcel that's for sale. And you can just see that, this is just a small sampling. But I'm going to talk more about the glyphs on our preserve, though, actually. So you can see here, this is one of the famous panels out here, and these are Rio Grande shield bearers. And there's several, hundreds of these figures across the site. And you'll notice he's got horns, and he's holding, if you can see faintly, he's holding a hammer that looks like the hammer in the center down here on the panel in his hand. And here we have one of the heraldic lions. It's a Spanish heraldic lion. There are several of these as well, and if you look closely, you can see on the back he's got a Spanish flag flying right above him with the cross. Oop! And so this rock is really interesting. Researchers believe this rock has what they call archaeoacoustic attributes, which means they think it's a speaking stone. And if you stand in front of this rock, it's concave. It has a concave shape to it. And when you talk or speak into the stone or play music, it reverberates in a very unusual way and kind of projects out into the canyon beyond. And so there's theories that this rock may have been a speaking stone used in ceremonies. They call it the speaking lion, and you can see there's some shields even on the back of the rocks behind the lion there too. And another place on the site that they also think has archaeoacoustic abilities is what they call Flute Player Hollow. And it's just a series of flute players in an area that has similar qualities. When you stand there, it sounds very different. And there's multiple flute players here. And this is just a very small sampling. And last but not least this is one of our favorites. This is supposedly a spring equinox marker. This four-legged quadruped is playing a flute. And during the spring equinox, the shadow from the very top of the rock that you see up there outlines the back of the creature perfectly. And so they believe it was marking the spring equinox and marking the beginning of the warm months and planting. Oops. Sorry. Okay, I messed it up. There we go. In conclusion, I'm honored to be part of the Archaeological Conservancy. Their cause is something very close to my heart. These are irreplaceable cultural resources. Once they're developed on or the plows chip them away, they're gone forever. And I'm just really proud to be part of an organization that's looking to the future and works hard to preserve these irreplaceable resources. And I'd like to thank you all for listening to me today. And if you want to know any more about any of these sites, and this is just a small sampling of the sites the Conservancy owns. I mean, I could go on forever. So if there's anything else you want to know about, please visit our website, which is here. You can also see our YouTube channel where you can learn a lot more about some of the sites I just told you about. We have long videos and presentations about them, so feel free to check us out. And thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, April. Okay. Come now to the offering. All offering funds this month, the month of November, are accepted on behalf of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Many in the congregation are members and donors to the UUSC. The UUSC responds to humanitarian crises and advances human rights and social justice around the world, partnering with those who confront unjust power structures and mobilizing to challenge oppression. The work is grounded in our first principle, the belief that all people have inherent worth and dignity. Please use the baskets in the room or the Givelify app on your mobile device or the link in the service notes to make your contribution. Thank you for your generosity, and may what you give bring you joy and a sense of greater connection. If you are coming to us for the first time through video, I invite you to sign our online guest book, connect with us on our website and Facebook page. If you have questions about the congregation or the church, you can email our minister, the Reverend John Cullinan. Links and other connections are listed in the service notes. If you haven't already done so, please sign up for the announcement email, and you'll see lots of opportunities to connect on Sunday and during the week. This week, I will call special attention to the construction of a rainbow float for the Light Parade, which is next weekend. Join the Religious Education Committee in Fellowship Hall at 3 p.m. today to be part of that fun. We are also in the process of updating the memorial plaque in the Fellowship Hall, but we're missing some information on some of our departed members. If you're interested in helping with some genealogical research, please see Joyce Nichols. Joyce, she's here today. You can also reach her by email. And if you plan to join the gingerbread house making event on December 11th, please RSVP soon. Thank you. Oh, it's my favorite hymn. Please stand as you're able for hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home. Our fourth UU principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, challenges us to be open to new insights based on personal experience or as part of a community. Let's rededicate ourselves to that search and be brave enough to change if that's where our path takes us. Go in peace.